Well, I was all for the hug until I saw who was giving it. Here's your look at the Mattel Master Universe Origins Snake Man, Squeeze, Evil Long-Armed Viper. Squeeze constricts his victims out of their last breath with his enormously elongated arms. If you ended up picking Squeeze's name for Secret Santa, stay away from anything that has sleeves. Before, of course, we get a closer look at the Master Universe Origins Evil Snake Man Squeeze, let's grab the tape measure and see how tall the figure stands. Well, his proportions are clearly elongated for his arms. His body's about the same as a regular Master Universe Origins body. I'll be bringing a couple of Snake Men in for comparison's sake in a second. That's a lot of S's. In the meantime, though, Squeeze stands about 6 inches in height, or the figure's going to be about 15 centimeters tall. So where do we stand on Snake Men? Well, let's bring in a couple of other Snake Men we've looked at in earlier reviews. Here's what Squeeze looks like with Cobra Khan, and Squeeze seems to be shorter than Cobra. And he's also what the figure looks like with Tongue Lasher, and it seems to be as well consistent that the figure's slightly smaller. Here's what the figure as well looks like with Snake Face. Here's what the figure as well looks like with Ratlore. Ratlore always was the one I really don't look forward to bringing in because his tail is always one thing that causes the figure to fall forward. And then the last figure, we have yet to still look at the other one figure. I think King Hiss. King Hiss was the other one we have yet to really pick up. Here's also what the figure looks like with the Snake Man Horde Trooper. While all the other snakes have slithered away, let's look at the stuff that comes with Squeeze. First, the figure comes included with a pamphlet. What's on the pamphlet? The secrets of the universe. Actually, no. The secrets, at least, of how to remove the things on Squeeze. You can take off his very long arms. You can also as well remove his lower torso, his boots, and his head. Taking off his head is actually not that hard. The figure's head sculpt is really loose. We're going to talk more about that in a moment. I have some good news to report is the fact that I haven't damaged the comic here. The Fading Fortress is also as well came included with Spycore, came also packaged as well with Squeeze. We'll see also the same thing also included as well for the Snake Man Infiltrator, and the same could be said as well when we look at Serpent Claw Man-at-Arms. Inside, again, nicely colorful pages here. I don't think we actually really got a chance to look at too many of the pages, but there's Spycore, Skeletor. Inside there's Man-at-Arms. I really like the look of that Man-at-Arms. And there's also Squeeze. Now, Squeeze has his pet snake. That's also something that comes included with the figure as well. Stay tuned. We'll see that in a second. But again, like nice, very... I mean, how many pages is that? That's what, six pages? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, five, 6 pages. And then, of course, there's advertisements always on the back to advertise the other things that you as a collector and consumer can pick up at your local store. Not here in Canada. Not here in Canada. The figure comes included with a pet snake. The snake is molded here in a very hard plastic. It's a pretty good-looking snake. For a second, it kind of reminded me of a sandworm from Beetlejuice. It's molded. I mean, it's got no give to it whatsoever. And the whole idea is he's supposed to hold this in his hand. If you look at the advertisements, it's supposed to kind of slither or attach onto his arm like this and then kind of clip inside his hand. But what it does, though, is unfortunately adds a lot of unnecessary weight then to his shoulders. So he always is holding his snake while it's got it on the ground. Good luck trying to actually have him holding it up. It just doesn't have, there's just too much weight involved to keep the snake in his hand. So again, you're just probably going to have to hold it just in his hand like, it looks almost like, oh, the poor dead snake looks like it's dead now. It is, again, an included accessory, probably not one I'm going to be displaying with the figure. I mean, the figure does benefit to his credit. He has the wireframe built into his arms, but even then, bending the arms and then trying to get the snake into his hand is, I mean, good luck doing that. It's way too heavy for these shoulders. These shoulders were, I also noticed as well, were really loose on my figure. Not nearly as loose, though, as his head. His head is super loose. And I don't really know why it had to be as loose as it is. I mean, I'm looking at the ball joint. The ball joint seems to be the same, unless the inside socket is way too large. I'm almost debating the idea of putting a little bit of glue or nail polish on the end of it to thicken up the ball joint. I think ironically enough, though, even though the character's name is Squeeze, I think in the comics his name was Tanglor. Tanglor, I think, makes more sense than to call the character Squeeze. The colors are really good on this guy, but he seems proportionally a little bit shorter than some of the other figures we've already had a look at. Sort of in the way his head sculpt is sculpted, it actually kind of looks more like a lizard than it does a viper. Well, I guess you could really use the argument, it's a reptile, it's a snake, but it, to me, looks more like a lizard or even like a gecko than maybe like an actual snake. The actual figure, again, when you're looking at his body proportions, even though he is supposed to be a Master Universe figure, he kind of, again, looks like he's from a different toy line altogether. I mean, also one thing that probably may lead you to that conclusion is the fact that the figure does have the very long arms. Now, the idea in mind is that you can wrap them around your other, say, for example, you had yourself, I don't know, I have He-Man here just onto the side here. You could, for example, have Squeeze wrapped around He-Man. And with the way that the arms are designed, you can actually bring the arms around and they kind of clip in on themselves. So you just clip them onto his forearms. You do the exact same thing then on the other side. And it kind of keeps everything self-contained, or at least it keeps He-Man self-contained. Longevity of this, though, I don't know if that's going to start to cause problems where it's going to damage the actual wire built inside the frame of the arms. But it's one way, of course, to display the figure. And again, to the credit, at least it actually does have a gimmick. Whether you think the gimmick is a little too long, I mean, certainly for the fact he has really long arms, I do at least like the idea that they gave him something a little bit. I mean, obviously, we just looked at recently Spycore, and Spycore had to unfortunately do away with his gimmick. Squeeze can at least be proudly saying that he keeps his gimmick still intact. Again, we're just going to, like, if you wanted to clip them around, you just take the arms and, like, literally just clip them in like he's holding his own biceps. You ever do that as a kid? Kind of just put your arms, your hands around your biceps, kind of feel how big they are? Okay, I'm only speaking for a friend. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and take the arms and move them out of the way. The coloring on this guy is actually really quite good. The paint is good on the top and the bottom of his teeth. I really like the way they've actually painted a very thin line of black in the middle of his pupil. Still, though, I mean, looking at it, it doesn't look to me as much like a Master Universe figure myself. But again, like, I mean, proportionately, he does have the same sizing. And one thing you can also do as well with the figure, he was sort of already this way when you got him in the packaging, that his knees were slightly bent. So if you want to have him more looking like the classic version of Squeeze, you can do that as well. Personally, for me, I prefer the idea of having the legs more straight. Now, he does have a little serpent symbol there in the middle of his chest. The coloring of the purple looks really quite good with the bright neon lime color that he has for the majority of his body. Speaking of his body, one other thing I also really noticed is not only is his head really, really loose, but his torso seems very prone to detaching all the time. I mean, not to the point where if you're going to be moving it back and forth, other than making a very loud, horrible sound. I did notice, though, that the lower half of his body does detach a little too easy for my liking. I don't know if I'm probably going to do anything to thicken that joint up at all. But again, like the coloring on him, he doesn't really have a whole lot of paint. He's got it here on his gauntlets. The gauntlets actually have little tiny serpents. Can you actually see that or not? Nice little touch. And he also has some really bright orange that matches actually the coloring of the gauntlets really nicely. Some additional gray down below there on his leg guards, and the gray and the orange also there for his boots. The figure does have, like always the case, peg holes on the undersides of his feet, so of course you can attach them onto a display stand, certainly if you wanted to. Figure's articulation is going to be a little bit more limited, obviously, because he has to lose something here. He still has articulation here in the hands, so that's still the same as all the other Master Universe origins, but he unfortunately has to lose it here in the elbows. He still has a wire frame, which is good to see, but he doesn't have, of course, any articulation bend in the elbows. So starting first with his head. Head's on a ball joint. You can move it up, down, back and forth, but I mean, like, look how loose that is. That should not be as loose as it is. Going to definitely have to try to fix that. Waist is on a swivel, and that's all you're going to get. Arms rotate all the way around, and you can also hinge them out. Now, you can only bring them out so far. I mean, if you were to say, look at the arms, just attach them so you can actually see. There is no hinge actually on the shoulder section. What it is only instead is just a peg, and the peg plugs into the inner cavity of the torso. So you're only really going to get that much when it comes to his arms. You really can't move them out at all. And then, of course, from here all the way down to the bums of where his little wrist bracelets are, this is a wire frame that runs all the way down the length of it. So, of course, you can also bend it backwards if you wanted to. You can make yourself like a little serpent bicep if you wanted to. Why we keep talking about biceps? Yeah, again, swivel on the waist. The legs are on ball joints. You can bring them out. You can take the legs and move forward and move them back. There's only a very mild swivel at the top of the thigh. Just move his arm out of the way. Single hinge only in the knee, but it allows the lower leg to rotate. Still, though, like, everything on this guy's loose. His head, his waist, his knees are very loose, and also his boots, very loose when you spin them around. And yes, they do also spin around. He has an ankle hinge, so you can move the ankles back and forth this way, and you can also rock them back and forth this way. It's a good-looking figure, but he feels really loose, though. And again, like when you're getting this guy on display, the benefit of him is the fact he still retains the gimmick. The downside to him, though, is if you're looking to display him with, say, the other Snake Man. So again, we'll just kind of bring in a couple of Snake Men for right now. I'm not bringing in Ratlore, no way. Bring in the other, like the Horde Trooper Snake Man. There's Tongue Lashor. Still yet to pick up King Hiss. I don't know what I'm doing. What's causing me to delay picking up King Hiss? Because then I can at least have up-to-date all the Snake Men. Yet you do have to allot for a little bit more real estate space when you're having the figures displayed all around Squeeze, just because, again, like the sizing of his arms are going to take up a lot more space. I'm glad to actually now say I have Squeeze as part of my collection, but man, the figure's going to be taking up a lot more space. And unfortunately, for mine at least, he is loose. He's loose, too loose in the head, too loose in the legs, too loose in the knees. And he is too loose, at least I feel, in his arms to even be able to properly hold his pet snake. I of course, appreciate the fact that the figures would have come included with their original vintage accessories, but it just isn't going to cut it here for Squeeze to hold it. I suppose one workaround you could always have to have him properly hold the pet snake is he actually could hold himself up by using one of his arms. Simply, again, just clipping on the hand onto any one of the areas of his wire-framed arms can be enough at least to keep his other arm up. Now, that's going to look a little ridiculous, like he's checking his own pulse, but at least it allows the figure to hold his arm upright, because there's no way you'd be able to do that otherwise with the snake also attached inside his hand. I like, again, that they included the accessory, but it basically makes the figure null and void. It makes the figure null and void anyways, considering his arms are as long as they are. You can't really have the arms always in an up position, because, of course, it adds stress then to the peg in the shoulder socket, and then the arms are just ultimately going to fall back onto the floor. Still, though, I like the look of Squeeze. I don't like the way he's constructed. Now, he's based again on the original vintage toy, but along with the one that we got here released now recently from Mattel, everything on the figure seemed loose on mine. Loose in the shoulders, loose especially in the head, the knees, and the ankles. And that really shouldn't be the case for a figure that you immediately get out of the packaging. The figure's obviously using some brand new tooling that wasn't present on any other figures. I'm like looking at Squeeze right now, and I can't see anything that's on the figure that wasn't already featured on an earlier, and I'm even thinking as well the Snake Men. I don't think anything body-wise has been used from this figure to any other one before him. So Squeeze is, of course, utilizing his brand new mold. Whether, again, we're going to be using this mold for any other future figures, time will certainly tell. I do like the look of Squeeze, but again, he's just problematic when it comes to displaying him. What do you guys think of the figure? Let me know down below in the comment section. If you've managed as well to get Squeeze, which again, I think he also in the comics, he was known originally as Tanglor. Tanglor sounds much cooler, I feel, than Squeeze. But if you had both the original vintage figure, or you're lucky enough to get yourself the new Master Universe Origin Squeeze, let me know as well down below in the comments section if you have anything that's loose on the figure. And we can discuss, we can digest, we can also be best friends. Hey, if you want to be also best friends, if you guys enjoying the content, you certainly would like to stick around. First, if you like the video, want to hit it with a like. But if you're also loving the content and you want to stick around and see what's more coming your way from the person behind the camera, make sure you hit the two crucial steps of hitting that subscribe button as number 1, turning on the bell notification as number 2, and I guess as a possible 3, make sure you're coming back, because while we have wrapped up things, while we have finished up things here with Squeeze, we of course will also still be looking at Snake Men Infiltrator and Serpent Claw Man-at-Arms. Of course, those videos will be coming your way. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.